This video is for educational purposes. Stockholm is the capital and most populous city of Sweden as well as the largest urban area in the Nordic countries. Approximately 1 million people live in the municipality, with 2.1 million in the urban area and 2.4 million in the metropolitan area. The city stretches across 14 islands where Lake Mälaren flows into the Baltic Sea. Outside the city to the east, and along the coast, is the island chain of the Stockholm archipelago. The area has been settled since the Stone Age, in the 6th millennium BC, and was founded as a city in 1252 by Swedish statesman Birger Jarl. The city serves as the county seat of Stockholm County. Subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you get notified each time we upload a new video. Stockholm is the cultural, media, political, and economic center of Sweden. The Stockholm region alone accounts for over a third of the country's GDP, and is among the top 10 regions in Europe by GDP per capita. Considered a global city, it is the largest in Scandinavia and the main center for corporate headquarters in the Nordic region. The city is home to some of Europe's top-ranking universities, such as the Karolinska Institute, Stockholm School of Economics, KTH Royal Institute of Technology and Stockholm University. It hosts the annual Nobel Prize ceremonies and banquet at the Stockholm Concert Hall and Stockholm City Hall. One of the city's most prized museums, the Vasa Museum, is the most visited museum in Scandinavia. The Stockholm Metro, opened in 1950, is well known for the decor of its stations. It has been called the longest art gallery in the world. The city was the host of the 1912 Summer Olympics, and has played host to several other international sports events since. Stockholm is Sweden's primary financial center, one of the largest in Scandinavia, and hosts several of Sweden's largest companies. Furthermore, the headquarters of most of Sweden's largest banks are in Stockholm. Stockholm is one of Europe's major tech centers. The city has sometimes been called Europe's innovation hub. The Stockholm region has a GDP of around $180 billion, and Stockholm County has the highest GDP per capita of all counties in Sweden. Stockholm is the seat of the Swedish government and most of its agencies, including the highest courts in the judiciary, and the official residences of the Swedish monarch and the Prime Minister. The government has its seat in the Rosenbad building. The Riksdag, Swedish Parliament, is seated in the Parliament House, and the Prime Minister's residence is adjacent at the Sager House. Stockholm Palace is the official residence and principal workplace of the Swedish monarch, while Drottningholm Palace in neighboring Eckerö serves as the royal family's private residence. After the Ice Age, around 8000 BCE, there were already many people living in what is today the Stockholm area, but as temperatures dropped, inhabitants moved south. Thousands of years later, as the ground thawed, the climate became tolerable and the lands became fertile, people began to migrate back to the north. At the intersection of the Baltic Sea and Lake Mälaren is an archipelago site where the old town of Stockholm was first built from about 1000 CE by Vikings. They had a positive trade impact on the area because of the trade routes they created. Stockholm's location appears in Norse sagas as Agnefit, and in Heimskringla in connection with the legendary King Ane. Birka, located near Stockholm, was one of Sweden's major trade centers during the Viking Age, and its restored remains are one of Stockholm County's most visited sites. The earliest written mention of the name Stockholm dates from 1252, by which time the mines in Bergslagen made it an important site in the iron trade. The first part of the name, stock, means log in Swedish, although it may also be connected to an old German word, stock, meaning fortification. The second part of the name, holm, means islet and is thought to refer to the islet Helgeandsholmen in central Stockholm. According to the Erik Chronicles, the city is said to have been founded by Birger Jarl to protect Sweden from sea invasions made by Karelians after the pillage of Sigtuna on Lake Mälaren in the summer of 1187. Stockholm's core, the present old town, Gamla Stan, was built on the central island next to Helgeandsholmen from the mid-13th century onward. The city originally rose to prominence as a result of the Baltic trade of the Hanseatic League. Stockholm developed strong economic and cultural linkages with Lübeck, Hamburg, Gdansk, Danzig, Visby, Tallinn, Reval, and Riga during this time. Between 1296 and 1478, Stockholm City Council was made up of 24 members, half of whom were selected from the town's German-speaking burghers, reflecting the importance of Germans in medieval Nordic trade. The strategic and economic importance of the city made Stockholm an important factor in relations between the Danish kings of the Kalmar Union and the Swedish national independence movement in the 15th century and early 16th century. The Danish king Christian II was able to enter the city in 1520, and on November 8 of that year, a massacre of opposition figures called the Stockholm Bloodbath took place and set off further uprisings that eventually led to the breakup of the Kalmar Union with the attainment of Swedish independence. With the accession of Gustav Vasa in 1523 and the establishment of royal power, the population of Stockholm began to grow, reaching 10,000 by 1600. The 17th century saw Sweden grow into a major European power, reflected in the development of the city of Stockholm. From 1610 to 1680 the population multiplied sixfold. In 1634, Stockholm became the official capital of the Swedish Empire. Trading rules were also created that gave Stockholm an essential monopoly over trade between foreign merchants and other Swedish, Baltic and Scandinavian territories. In 1697, Tre Kronor Castle burned and was replaced by Stockholm Palace. The time of the Swedish Empire also saw several architectural modernizations of the city. The beginning of the Swedish Empire saw a renaissance in the arts and sciences. The new queen, Christina, was a strong supporter of science and culture. René Descartes, one of the most prominent European philosophers of his time, died in Stockholm. He had been hosted by the Queen for several years prior to his death. Inventors, like Christopher Polhem, moved to the city during the time of the Swedish Empire. Academics also spent much time in Stockholm, like Olaus Rudbeck, rector of the Uppsala University. Throughout Sweden's history, walls were created in Stockholm to defend the city from attacks. These defensive walls were modified throughout the 13th to the 16th century. In 1625, the Great Stockholm Fire of 1625 destroyed the southwestern section of Stadsholmen, an island in the center of Stockholm. The amount of destruction led to the beginning of the demolition of the Stockholm walls. Today, most of the younger city walls cannot be found anywhere above ground. However, parts of the northern city walls are preserved in the modern Museum of Medieval Stockholm. In 1710, a plague killed about 20,000, 36% of the population. After the end of the Great Northern War the city stagnated, population growth halted and economic growth slowed. The city was in shock after having lost its place as the capital of a great power. However, Stockholm maintained its role as Sweden's political center and continued to develop as the country's economic and cultural capital. During the Age of Enlightenment in the late 18th century, the city flourished. The new monarch, Gustav III, proved an able and energetic regnant. His economic policies helped the Swedish economy develop, and his partially successful war against Russia restored some of Sweden's international reputation. The king was an avid patron of the arts, and scientists and cultural figures flocked to Stockholm on a scale unprecedented since the reign of Queen Christina. During this time, Carl Michael Bellman and Joseph Martin Krauss helped develop the city's music, a process further accelerated by the founding of the Royal Swedish Opera. Various artists and writers became prominent, funded by the king and other cultural patrons like Carl Gustav Tessin. The two aforementioned figures laid the base for Sweden's National Museum at this time. Science also became prevalent. Renowned figures like Carl Linnaeus and Anders Celsius spent time in Stockholm, and various research institutes, like the Stockholm Observatory, were founded. The early 19th century saw a major economic decline of Stockholm and Sweden as a whole, but by the second half of the 19th century, Stockholm had regained its leading economic role. New industries emerged with industrialization and Stockholm was transformed into an important trade and service center as well as a key gateway point within Sweden. The population also grew dramatically during this time, mainly through immigration. At the end of the 19th century, less than 40% of the residents were Stockholm-born, with most migrants being from poorer rural Sweden. Major settlement began to expand outside the historical city limits. The 19th century also saw the establishment of a number of scientific institutes and universities, including the Karolinska Institutet and KTH Royal Institute of Technology. The General Art and Industrial Exposition was held in 1897, drawing international attention. From 1887 to 1953 the old Stockholm telephone tower was a landmark. Originally built to link phone lines, it became redundant after these were buried, and it was later used for advertising before its demolition in the 20th century. The early 20th century also saw the creation of the Nobel Prizes, some of Stockholm's most renowned institutions. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you get notified each time we upload a new video. See you in the next one.